So in this video I'm going to show you how to turn your grandmother into a theremin. Just like that. I might cut that bit out. It's an easy patch, it's easy to set up, and I think it's a really fun sound to play with. I've also written a little theremin tune which I shall play at the end of the video. Now if you're watching this, I'm going to assume you know what a theremin is. It was invented in 1919 by Mr. Theremin, so it's over 100 years old, and it was one of the world's first electronic musical instruments. Now when I think of a theremin sound, I tend to think of 50s and 60s science fiction movies. At the time, electronic music hadn't really gone off the ground, and I think audiences listening to the theremin in those sort of movies would think it was indeed a very alien sound, so I think it was very effective. However, you can still play proper tunes on the theremin. I don't think it's a particularly easy instrument to play, but of course, using the grandmother, we can make it a lot easier. So let's head over to Grandma and see how to set it up. Okay, so we're going to look at three aspects of theremin sound production. The first is tone or timbre, the second will be pitch, and the third will be modulation. So we'll start with the tone. The original theremins produced a sort of sine wave tone, which must have sounded quite eerie to people who hadn't heard it before. It's not a particularly natural sound, the sine wave that you would normally hear in nature. So we can use the sine wave in the oscillator, in the first oscillator. I'm only using the first oscillator for this. So that sounds quite theremin-like. You can, of course, use any sound you like. More modern theremins, such as the Moog Theramini, give you a choice of waveforms, so you can use something a bit more raspy or a bit more synthy. I quite like this sound. If we cut off a few of the harmonics, maybe increase it sounds a little more full, I guess, but you can use whatever you want. Now the theremin sound doesn't have a sharp attack, so you might want to increase the attack time a little bit. The sound continues as long as you continue to play it, so it really doesn't seem to have a decay, so you might want to set the sustain to full and the decay to fast, and you might want to add a little bit of a release phase just so it doesn't cut off abruptly, and you can add a little bit of reverb, give it a little bit of an atmosphere, particularly if you are producing spacey sounds. The next thing we're going to look at is pitch, which is where we get to use the glide control. If you've heard any theremin music, you'll know that it often slides between notes rather than jumps to discrete notes, but of course that does depend on the skill of the player. So let's add a little bit of glide. So that sounds about right to me. It will depend on your personal preference. Now, one of the things that you will notice is if you play two notes which are separated by a few intervals, there's a very noticeable glide, but if you play notes which are close together, there's still a little bit of glide there, but not so much. Now, I have experimented with software theremins, or at least synthesizers with a theremin preset, and some of those have a glide between, a very distinctive glide between every single note, and to me that sort of sounds a bit unnatural. I actually much prefer this set whereby you get a glide between notes which are far apart and not so much of a glide between notes which are closer together. It adds variation, and I think it sounds a little bit more realistic. But all this is down to your personal preference, of course. Now, the other fun part is the modulation, or the vibrato, which is another major feature of the theremin. So to do this, I'm going to put the modulation wheel at about 70 or 80%, and we're going to dial in a little bit of a vibrato in the LFO section using the rate control and the pitch control. Now, the best or most musical vibratos are between 4 and I think it's 7 cycles per second. So again, this is down to personal preference. So I think that sounds quite theremin-like. Now, it's very important, I think, to get a good theremin sound to use vibrato, and also to use the mod wheel as a performance control. This is why I set it to 70 or 80%. So we can push it to extremes if we want to, and you might want to do that occasionally. But most of the time, I would think you probably want it around halfway. And as you play, you will be wanting to wiggle the mod wheel a significant amount. So let's just give this a little bit of a try and see what it sounds like. So you can see when you take the vibrato off, it loses the sort of theremin character. So there you go, Grandma theremin. Can you tell the difference? Yes, I know you probably can, but I think it's a fun patch to play with and to create sounds and music with. If you do use the patch, or any patch indeed at all that produces a theremin-like sound, and you create some music with it, then please do leave a link to it in the description. And as always, if you have any comments or questions about this video, leave them in the comments and I'll reply to them as soon as I can. So I hope you found this interesting, useful, helpful, entertaining. If you did, if you would like to see more videos like this, more tutorial videos, more videos about synthesizers, pieces of electronic music as well, then please do consider subscribing to the channel, ringing the bell. Thank you, so you get informed of new videos as soon as I release them, and clicking the big thumb really does help as well. As always, I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos and listen to my music. So for that, thank you very much indeed. So I will see you in the next video, and here is the little theremin piece.